we tend to prioritize avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains. This tendency is known as loss aversion. It's associated with how our brains work. The increase in potential gains triggers increased activity in the midbrain dopaminergic regions, the very parts of the brain associated with pleasure and reward. However, when faced with potential losses, activity in the same brain regions decreases. Loss aversion has a greater impact on our decision-making than we think. We are more sensitive to potential losses than we are equivalent to gains. The pain of losing $100 typically outweighs the pleasure derived from gaining the same amount. When faced with a choice between a guaranteed $100 or a gamble where we may win $200 or nothing at all, most of us would take the sure bet. On the other hand, if the scenario is flipped and we had to choose between a certain loss of $100 or a gamble where we may lose $200 or nothing at all, many of us would choose to gamble. The differences in our choices suggest our innate tendency to take higher risk to avoid losses. Consider a situation where the possibilities of winning and losing are equal. We tend to be more influenced by the possibility of loss. If given a gamble that offers a 50-50 chance of either gaining or losing money, the majority of us would reject it. They'd only entertain the idea of such a gamble if the potential gain was significantly larger than the potential losses, say $100 versus $50. The influence of potential losses is roughly twice as strong as potential gains. The heightened sensitivity to loss pushes us to prefer to stick with the status quo even when change may be beneficial. We are naturally wary of potential losses and tend to favor the familiar over the unknown. We stay in our comfort zone and avoid situations or experiences that challenge us. Loss aversion has been observed in children as young as 5 years old. In fact, loss aversion is not solely a human characteristic. Capuchin monkeys have been found to demonstrate loss aversion. This suggests a possibility that there could be a shared mental process between humans and other primates that is responsible for processing potential losses. Loss aversion has been in the design of tax systems in many countries. For example, there are two taxpayers, A and B, both of whom have identical incomes and owe the same amount of $10,000 in taxes. Suppose A's employer withheld $9,000 from his paycheck for taxes, and B's employer withheld $11,000. When it comes to time to file their tax returns, taxpayer A will be averse to the process because he'll need to pay an additional $1,000, making it feel like a loss. Taxpayer B, on the other hand, will be eager to file her taxes, anticipating a $1,000 refund, which will feel like a gain. By leveraging loss aversion, tax authorities can encourage taxpayer compliance and facilitate the smooth functioning of the tax system. This example shows how understanding loss aversion can be instrumental in influencing individual behaviors and shaping policies. Here is another scenario. You need to decide whether to give teachers bonuses at the beginning or the end of an academic year. What's your choice? With what you've learned about loss aversion, how does the timing of offering bonuses influence teachers' performance and ultimately their students' success? At first glance, you may think that a bonus handed out at the end of the year, like a sweet reward for a job well done, would drive teachers to excel in their teaching throughout the year. However, the reality turned out to be quite the opposite. Teachers who received their bonuses at the end of the year showed no significant improvement in student test scores compared to those without bonuses. Why does financial reward fail to make a difference in employee performance? Bonuses handed out at the end of the year did not trigger loss aversion because teachers did not lose anything they've never had. As a result, the end-of-year bonus failed to motivate teachers to improve their performance, and their students' test scores remained relatively unaffected. However, when you receive a bonus upfront, you now have something to lose, and that sense of loss aversion becomes a powerful driving force. You are compelled to put in that extra effort because you don't want to lose it. It's as if the fear of losing the bonus sharpens your focus and determination, leading to an enhanced commitment to teaching excellence. Power can serve as a mitigator of loss aversion. In positions of power, people become less preoccupied with the fear of losing something because the experience of authority itself acts as a buffer against the emotional impact of potential losses. This diminished valuation of losses empowers those in positions of power to take risk and even break established rules to achieve their goals. Here is a historical example. George Washington was deeply aware of his influential position as the first president of the United States. He believed that not seeking a third term as president would set an important precedent for future presidents. By voluntarily stepping down after 2 terms, he sought to establish the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power and to prevent an overly powerful executive branch. His decision sent a clear message that the United States needed a leader, not a monarch, and the consolidation of power should be avoided. However, the norm established by George Washington was tested by Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1940s. After serving 8 years as president, Roosevelt felt emboldened by his tenure and the challenges faced during the Great Depression and World War II. Convinced that he was the best fit to lead the nation during the war, Roosevelt decided to run for and successfully won a 3rd term in 1940. His belief in his leadership abilities led him to win a 4th term in 1944 as well. FDR's confidence in his ability to navigate the nation through tumultuous times allowed him to defy the established norm of 2 terms and seek multiple terms as president. Power has a mitigating effect on loss aversion, make power holders less averse to losses, and empower them to challenge established norms. This power-induced propensity to challenge established norms was not unique to Roosevelt. Ulysses S. Grant and Theodore Roosevelt also sought a 3rd term in 1880 and in 1912, respectively, although neither was successful in securing either a party nomination or a general election victory. FDR's unprecedented terms as President of the United States raised concerns among some members of Congress and the public about the potential of an indefinite consolidation of power in the executive branch. After Roosevelt's death in April 1945, just a few months into his 4th term, there was growing bipartisan support for limiting the number of terms a president could serve. Critics argue that unlimited presidential terms could lead to the emergence of an overly powerful executive and potentially undermine democratic principles. They believe that term limits would help preserve the principles of a constitutional republic and prevent the concentration of power in one individual. In 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. A president can serve a maximum of 2 full terms in office, either consecutively or non-consecutively. Power has a tendency of centralization. As power centralizes, it raises concerns about potential abuses of power, lack of accountability, and the exclusion of diverse perspectives. To counteract the toxic effects of power centralization, imposed term limits is one of many tools to ensure a healthy balance of power. In organizational contexts, loss aversion has been closely associated with dishonest practices such as manipulation of self-reported performance or outright deception. The driving force behind this behavior comes from the aversion to tarnishing one's positive self-image, which can be perceived as a significant loss. To avoid this potential loss, people feel incentivized to resort to dishonest behaviors like lying and cheating. Let's revisit the case of providing teachers with bonuses at the beginning of the academic year. While this approach was seen to improve student test scores, it might also have inadvertently encouraged some teachers to manipulate those scores dishonestly. Even minor tweaks in incentive structures can significantly influence the prevalence of cheating. The advanced bonus establishes a new reference point, making the prospect of losing it feel much more significant than gaining it at year end. This is the powerful influence of loss aversion, which can compel people to engage in unethical behavior such as lying or cheating. In the corporate world, the fear of job loss may lead employees to falsify their performance metrics or withhold damaging information. A business threatened with losing a key client might resort to unethical or illegal tactics to keep the client. Similarly, people facing potential welfare cuts or high tax payments may be tempted to manipulate their income reporting or other details. Another example of loss aversion is the fear of reputation loss, both on personal and professional levels. A company may go to great lengths, including cover-ups or misrepresentation of facts, to prevent a scandal that might tarnish its image. High-profile leaders and executives whose professional reputation significantly influences their career trajectory are particularly vulnerable to this aspect to loss aversion. They might employ strategic omissions, distortion of facts, or other dubious tactics to protect their public image. During the 20 years of the Vietnam War from 1955 to 1975, the U.S. government faced significant challenges and setbacks, and there were instances of attempts to downplay or cover up losses and negative developments. One notable example is the Pentagon Papers, a classified study of the Vietnam War conducted by the U.S. Department of Defense. The Pentagon Papers expose discrepancies between what the U.S. government was publicly stating about the war's progress and the internal assessments that showed a more pessimistic outlook. It revealed that the government had suppressed information about the extent of casualties, military setbacks, and doubts about the feasibility of victory. The attempted cover-up of losses and negative developments during the Vietnam War can be seen as a manifestation of loss aversion. The government may have been motivated to conceal or downplay the negative aspects of the war to avoid a perceived loss of public support, political credibility, and influence. The fear of reputation loss and the desire to maintain public trust and support could have influenced the decisions to withhold or manipulate information. In 1971, the Pentagon Papers was leaked by whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg. Do you remember Daniel Ellsberg? We've already learned about him in my earlier video of ambiguity aversion. Does Ell's paradox ring a bell? feel free to check out the video to refresh your memory. Here, Daniel Ellsberg was a former military analyst who decided to expose the truth to the American public. The release of the Pentagon Papers contributed to growing public opposition to the war and further eroded trust in the government's handling of the conflict. The revolutions sparked widespread protests and added to the pressure for an end to the U.S. involvement in Vietnam. From the decisions we make in our personal lives to the actions of global leaders and corporations, loss aversion plays an unseen yet powerful role. As we've explored today, it can influence behaviors in unexpected ways, sometimes leading to dishonest practices and resistance to change. With awareness, our understanding of loss aversion can also be harnessed to drive positive behavior and make informed decisions, as in the case of tax filing systems or motivating performance. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you are more motivated to avoid loss than to seek gain, take a moment to consider if loss aversion is playing a part. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of loss aversion. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.